DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Against the Boards. I'm Chamberlain Bauder. Thanks to my producer Paul Russo for getting us rolling. And I have a little bit of pep in my step today. To say it's been a crazy week for me would be an understatement, actually, just personal life-wise. If you're interested in seeing some community theater, be sure to swing on down to South Seneca High School throughout this weekend at 7:30. Something Rotten, a musical about Shakespearean England and some down-on-their-luck writers. I've been in that this week and haven't left the school until like midnight each night. It's been a little busy, but we're here, we're rolling, and we're ready to get into some lacrosse, and I am so thankful to say that yesterday we finally got some good news in the Knighthawks universe of things when it comes to what's going on, and we'll send it to good old reliable friend of the program at this point, Adam Levy, who hit it on Twitter and sets up so that you can go and listen to the Lacrosse Classified podcast, which it definitely is something you should listen to if you're someone looking for more lacrosse content. But I plan on breaking down everything within this quote a little bit here. So the quote from Jamie Dawick, the owner of the Toronto Rock, is, "I am very optimistic that Rochester will survive. There's been some definite interest in Rochester." So let's preface that just a little bit first in that statement. He talked about a lot of things in this interview, and almost every other one was completely negative. He talked about the CBA and talking about potentially just going down to Florida and turning his phone off if it doesn't get signed and waiting out a year on the NLL season. He talked about being disappointed in the media rights deals that they're able to get because of the timeline of when the team plays, being that it's during hockey, football, basketball season. But then somehow when talking about the Knighthawks, he was genuinely positive in his inflection while talking about them, and also stated he's very optimistic. Got asked more specifically about it in the sense of, are you optimistic because the league would run the team for a year? And he specifically said, no, that is not. He said, no, that is not what he thinks is happening. And that he's optimistic because for the last 6 months, there have been serious conversations for someone with deep enough pockets to take over the ownership in Rochester. So that is the current situation of the Rochester Knighthawks as we go right now. Great listen. I literally tuned into it on my way here, just that 15-minute segment. It really is just a small segment of the whole episode in the second half of it. You will have to go digging if you want to listen for it, or listen for about 45 minutes before you get to it. Thankfully, Lacrosse Classified has chapters listing out where all of their topics are. But yeah, it was a really interesting conversation to listen to. But I really want to hit home the fact that Dawick was genuinely negative about so many things in this that it felt like, okay, now we're going to get to Rochester and he's going to be like, yep, everything sucks. I mean, he talked about 5 teams potentially. He didn't say names of teams. He talked about 5 different teams that might any given year just fold and go into a dispersal draft situation. And then said he's optimistic that Rochester will stay in Rochester. So I'm going to take the optimism from Jamie Dawick and hope that we get some good news in the next coming weeks, because that's the other thing too. We're now getting close to that time period where this information is going to come out. So keep your ears perked. Keep posting on your story, posting on Facebook, Instagram, social media, wherever you can, and making your voices heard. and we will keep lacrosse in Rochester. That is the hope. And now on to some more general lacrosse news. I opened up my Twitter today, and I don't know how much I've really talked about it other than just to Paul here about my frustrations with Twitter and the rage bait that it has become. But man, did I see a great tweet today when I opened up X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, coming out of Jake Elliott, who is the host of the Lacrosse Classified podcast. And ironically, I don't know if my algorithm's just Elon's listening to my car or something. That could very well be it. But James Hogan, obviously from the Mitchell Pelkey lacrosse show, former face-off specialist at Ohio State, put out a tweet of what would be the greatest lacrosse what if. And boy, did Jake Elliott sum it up absolutely perfectly. What if both professional lacrosse leagues acknowledged each other and tried to work together? Wow. What a concept. What a novel concept that I don't think anybody's really harped on enough. And meanwhile, this is coming out of the guy who on the Lacrosse Classified podcast, while talking to Dawick about the fact that he's going to draft CJ Kirst first overall in this next draft, they said the other guys that play during the summer, they wouldn't even bring up a league. Like, this is what we're talking about. Lacrosse doesn't acknowledge each other. They belittle each other, and it ruins the integrity of the sport as a whole because we can't actually grow together, and we have to grow in three separate entities between senior lacrosse in Canada, the NLL, and the PLL. Why can we not figure out a better way to coexist? And anybody that's arguing at the top that they are coexisting hasn't listened to the broadcasters calling the time that these PLL players are playing in the winter the off season. It's not the off season. And meanwhile, in the same vein, the NLL cannot be talking about trying to get their games to be played in the summer. We need cohesiveness, and it does not exist right now, and it makes it laughable and upsetting that it's something that I try to cover as much as I do, and this is how the people at the top of it interact with one another while trying to grow the sport. It's not what they're doing. So now that I've gotten on my soapbox and I can get back off of it here, let's talk about the PLL because, of course, we still have our upstate New Yorkers thriving, absolutely thriving in the PLL right now. A couple of guys in some disappointing spots, no doubt. The Archers not doing too hot at the end of the day right now, but the Denver Outlaws, on the backs of Corning native Logan McNaney in goal and an offense that has figured it out with Pat Cavanaugh as their quarterback, 5 in a row for the formerly Rochester Rattlers, now Denver Outlaws. McNaney right there next to the 5 with that big, they always say baby face that he's got, but he's got the facial hair now, so you can't really say it. That big smile there, but Denver is absolutely on a heater right now. And I mean, that whole defense is absolutely cooking with McNaney in goal, and it makes total sense. But this game that they played last weekend was easily the game of the year so far. 18-17. Denver comes out with the win. I think every single attackman for Denver had a behind-the-back goal in this game. It was absolutely absurd. There's Wisnauskas after you already saw a behind-the-back goal from Pat Cavanaugh. The most outrageous goal of the day was actually not that one. Jared Bernhardt had like 3 of those. It was sick. The sickest goal of the day actually made SportsCenter. Brennan O'Neill with an ungodly and unnecessary between the legs off of a one-handed snag crash in the crease. And that was already to go with a behind-the-back goal that he had scored earlier. Like, it was gross lacrosse. And to, make it even better, it was at 3 o'clock on ABC. Like, that kudos to the PLL for the way that worked out, because that game was easily the game of the year so far, and you had it on the biggest possible streaming point at a time where it could be in the prime at 3 on a Saturday. No other sports are going. That is prime summer, sit on your couch or sit on your back porch with the TV going and watch lacrosse. And it was a perfect game for it. Absolutely perfect game for it. But Denver dominating, and really, I mean, I don't think there is a specific MVP on that team right now. You could argue it's Logan McNaney. You could argue, in the same vein that it's Logan McNaney, you could probably argue that it's Jesse Bernhardt being his defensive coordinator for all of college, and now he's able to easily transition into this defense, or being his defensive coordinator. And you could also make the argument that it's Pat Cavanaugh on the offensive end being the quarterback of this team, and the way that they're running is through him. You could then argue that without Jared Bernhardt getting added into that group, they don't receive the production that they do because they all get a little bit more attention. And then we can't forget about the refrigerator that runs through the middle that is 42 and Brennan O'Neill. So many factors to that team. And it is awesome to watch right now. And I will be calling them the team formerly known as the Rochester Rattlers until I die. Or until they put a team in Rochester, and then even then I still might call them the team formerly known as the Rochester Rattlers. So who really knows at this point? But that is the Outlaws sitting at the top in the West. Meanwhile, in the East at the top, it is the New York Atlas. Upstate New York fans can ride high right now knowing that some upstaters and, in general, the team from New York are at the top of their respective conference standings. And as we take a look now to the overall conference standings after this last week of Native American Heritage Week, of course, New York and Denver, the only teams with 5 wins so far. Still seeing a lot of parity there. We finally got the first 5-loss team, though, with the California Redwoods. Quinn Kesnich's power rankings from week 2, putting them at the bottom of the barrel. Seemingly a little bit more accurate now as we look to it. But it's definitely interesting as we look to this. One of the key things I think to look at is score differential. As you see, Carolina and California, a 9-goal difference there. So at the end of the day, if Carolina and California have the same record on the last week of the regular season, Carolina is going to get the first overall pick potentially, and California is going to go to the playoffs solely because of goal differential. Definitely something to keep an eye on as weeks go on in this league where you only get 10 games in the regular season to figure yourself out and figure out your records and whatnot. But as we look to the full overall league standings, New York 1 more goal on the goal differential board than Denver. The East kind of dominating that league standings right now. 3 of the 4 teams that would make the Champ Series, which you likely won't hear me talk about even when we get to February, very much at least. Ultimately, a lot of the East in the top right now, and based on how we've seen the season go so far, that makes complete sense. Carolina and California, both of the 2 teams that have gotten a new head coach and general manager into their organizations, trying to figure it out and put things together. And then meanwhile, the Utah Archers have just been on a little bit of a skid here. But we're going to take this opportunity with the league standings up to run through Paul Carcaterra's power rankings, which just got released like 5 minutes before we went on air. So at the bottom and staying at the bottom, the California Redwoods and then the Carolina Chaos. No surprise with those bottom 2, but dropping down with their loss and having moved to the bottom of the East, the Boston Cannons, Carcaz at 6. The Archers, he's got sticking at 5 at their 3-4 record. And then as we get to the top 4, it is partially reflective of the top 4 league standings. Maryland in at 4 in Cark's power rankings, and Philadelphia in at 3. They still have way more room to go with figuring out CJ Kirst and how that works. But then he's got the New York Atlas at 2 and the Denver Outlaws at 1, sticking from last week based on his power rankings, but versus the league standings just because of goal differential. Those two are flipped there. Ultimately, the parity is starting to come away in the sense that we are seeing a bit more of the bottom teams versus the top teams, but that wouldn't have come out the way that it did if it weren't for TD Erlin getting injured. Because at the end of the day, that California versus New York game would have gone completely differently if TD Erlin played the entire game. The difference of not having a face-off specialist versus having one. And then you add in the fact that TD is a top 3 face-off specialist in the league. And he's going up against Trevor Baptiste, who's also one of the top 3 face-off specialists in the league. Just makes it a hard situation that you're not going to win many of when he goes out. So, ultimately, though, we're still in this situation in the PLL where anybody can beat anybody. And that's a good thing. That is what the league wants. I just worry that we're not going to have large enough margins in between teams by the time that we get to the playoffs. And we're starting to get those margins a little bit more right now. But yeah, we'll have to ultimately wait and see for another week. This week, it'll be the Utah Archers homecoming with a doubleheader for them. They need a big bounce back. They could drop well down in the West if they were to lose both of their games. They got to play California first at 8 p.m. on Friday, and then they have to play Denver on Saturday at 9 p.m. Those are Eastern times. That Archers-Denver game is going to be awesome because it'll be at about 7 p.m. Mountain time for Utah. So hoping that we get a beautiful sunset with the mountains in Utah for that game. Other matchups for the weekend, Maryland Whipsnakes taking on the New York Atlas. That game will be 10:30 Eastern on Friday night. And then at 6:30 on Saturday, it'll be the Philly Water Dogs and the Carolina Chaos. That's going to do it for us this week on Against the Boards. Good news for the Knighthawks, and we'll try to keep you up to date even more as we get more information rolling next week. But for my producer, Paul Russo, and myself, Chamberlain Botter, we'll see you next time. You're listening to Against the Boards.